Yes, we are. The 7 billion people in the world, the people in the 7 continents of the world. I'm still here. I remain your host and your moderator. Depends on what you decide to call me. My name still remains Ade Balogun. Yes, I've been inundated with calls, messages, everybody saying, oh, you've not said anything about the Supreme Court judgment delivered some week back about the election in Nigeria. Yes. So we're going to look at it. We're going to have a post-mortem on the Supreme Court judgment and will election ever be fair in Nigeria? We're going to look at the future of election generally in Nigeria. A lot has happened between then and now, but I think it's only fair in our tradition at Atlanta Discourse to take a look at it. And we have no other person than our friend in-house specialist, Adejuwon and Johnny. Adejuwon, welcome to Atlanta Discourse.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeolu. I appreciate the opportunity once again.
Yes, for those of you that are meeting him for the first time, he's a well-known person here. But Adejuwon is a social commentator and a public affairs analyst, deeply passionate about development of Africa and the African diaspora. Alongside his advocacy work, he has built a successful career in information technology, hold various leadership positions in different U.S. government agencies. Currently reside in Atlanta, Adejuwon shares a journey with his family while contributing his effort to promote positive change for Africa and its people. Passionate, says the truth, goes for the jugular all the time. Topic is post-mortem on the Nigerian Supreme Court judgment and what the future of election looks like in Nigeria. Adejuwon, what do you think about the last Supreme Court judgment? I know we've discussed it in the past, but privately. But what do you think? Do you think the judgment was fair, or, I mean, vis-a-vis the 2022 Electoral Act as amended? What's your overview?
Well, thank you once again for having me here. Vis-a-vis, looking at the judgment, the Supreme Court judgment that we've all been waiting for, the Supreme Court of Nigeria is the highest court of justice in the land. It's called the last hope of the common man. Some are now calling it the lost hope of the common man in the light of the events that have happened. But looking at the judgment itself, which dwelt mostly on technicalities and not of substance, I'm of the opinion that it may be legally correct, it may be legally okay, but not going into the substance of the case, especially looking at the work that the PDP presidential candidate did, going all the way to the US to obtain actual documents to prove allegations of forgery, perjury, serial occasions of that. For the highest position on the land, I think the judgment missed the mark. It missed the moment. I think the Supreme Court of Nigeria missed the moment, missed the mark. And with the judgment that they gave, which essentially has confirmed his election as president, I feel like the Supreme Court of Nigeria has just set in motion a very, very terrible precedent whose implications for Nigeria's democracy will be very, very dire in the coming years. So that is honestly what I feel it is. I feel technically, yes, may have been correct, but what Nigeria needed at this time was beyond legal technical accuracy. What we needed was to see a true and in-depth introspection, investigation into the person that our president will be. For a country like Nigeria that is beleaguered in the international community with a very bad image, this should have been an opportunity as a country to say, you know what? No, we don't stand for corruption, for fraudulent character. We are not drug dealers. We are not perjurers. We are not forgers. We are competent people. We are people of noble character. We are people who put what is right before what is expedient. And I feel like the Supreme Court did not help us to achieve that with this judgment. It was a letdown.
It was a total.
Correct. It was a letdown. Ignoring the issues with Abuja, for instance, that's a big deal that will have implications going down the lane. You set a precedent where people can now say that a lot of our political class has a lot of daredevils in it, a lot of people who will push the envelope to the degree that they can. And then what this Supreme Court judgment says is, even if you forge your certificates, even if you perjure yourself on the forms, there's a space for you in the Nigerian government up to the highest levels of the land, of authority in the land. There's a space for you. What this Supreme Court judgment said is what we saw play out in Kogi State, in which politicians can now say, Nigerian politicians who are already not great people, we already know that. No less a character than Rotimi Amici has been saying it for years, that the reason why Nigeria is so bad is because Nigerians don't stone politicians. He said that a couple of years ago. And then a few weeks ago, he said, because Nigerians never react. So it's basically saying we are bad people, those of them in the political class. So what the Supreme Court is telling Nigerian politicians is that just get yourself declared as winner, tell them to go to court and do the things that you need to do behind the scenes to influence things. Justice Datijo Mohammed's valedictory speech just after the judgment told us a lot about how compromised our judiciary is in the area of courage, character, but also as an institution in the way it is structured. So the Supreme Court led the country down with the judgment that they gave, and it's going to affect Nigeria's image. It's going to affect a lot of things, including us, Nigerians in the diaspora, for many, many years.
So you said maybe it was technically correct. So which areas in that judgment do you think were technically correct? Is there any lesson? Is there any positive to bring out, so to say?
So that's an amazing question, Mr. Diolu. I'm not a lawyer, so I do not know the law the way lawyers do, but I've read a lot of opinions from legal luminaries that I respect, and the general consensus is that the technicalities of the case was what the judgment focused upon, potentially including the timing of the filing and things like that, and why some things were not done at some point and why they were done at some point. So the actual technical parts of it, I couldn't speak much to it other than that is the general consensus of knowledgeable people. But the actual meat of this case was not dealt with by the Supreme Court. And that's like shirking responsibility. Like there's no other place to go to seek redress except with God than the Supreme Court of Justice. How can you ignore things as serious as that? Deal with the substance of the case. We don't want somebody who has forfeited money for drug dealing or somebody who evidently has forged so many different dates and names and things that's so evident on the international scene that everybody can see it. But you don't get to talk about that? No, that is wrong. That is wrong. I listened to the speech of the PDP candidate. I listened to the speech of the Labour Party candidate, and both gentlemen, along with many others, believe that this was a judgment that completely missed the mark.
Interested. So I know you agree with me, and a lot of other people know, even internationally, locally, like you said, legal luminaries. There are a lot of things that are enshrined in the 2022 Electoral Act as amended in the Nigerian Constitution that were not adhered to by that judgment. I mean, we can pick them one by one and all that. Now, what does that portend going forward? Because on the issue of forgery, for example, the same appeal courts in areas in senatorial election, House of Representative election, have nullified elections of people that were elected, people that are already serving congressmen, House of Reps members for forgery. I think I can come up with about 4. I think they might be up to 6. But there were cases of forgery, fake WAEC certificate, fake university degree certificate, and they have been removed from office. So it is looking, even from our own research at Atlanta, discussed that the Supreme Court, there's no consistency in adherence to the Constitution and the rule of law. In some cases, people have been dealt with for forgery. In some cases, people have been overlooked for forgery. So what do you think? I mean, you're going to talk about all that, but what do you think that portends for the country going forward? Because technically speaking, actually, it makes the Constitution almost irrelevant. And that's a recipe for anarchy in itself. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like we are in a state of undeclared anarchy. It's like the average citizen kind of understands that there's no rule of law in the land. Everything you see is to the degree of influence you have, including court judgments. I think that is clear, that is subtly understood by the citizens. And in a sense, that is anarchy coming. The Kogi State elections, you saw what happened in the Kogi State elections. It was like war.
Definitely.
Imo State, it was like they were literally beating each other inside the space where the elections were being called and declared. Agents fighting, pugilism going on. So, yes, we do have a constitution. Yes, we do have the Electoral Act, but the constitution has not been upheld. The Electoral Act has been betrayed. INEC came out to promise us that they were going to use electronic voting. That was their big selling point for this election. And they got billions of naira, hundreds of billions of naira to set up the architecture for this electronic transfer of votes. The INEC chairman came out several times. The Electoral Act was amended to support that. That electronic transfer of votes would be used. And it was used for several of the elections, and then the presidential elections in many places, it began to fail. There are so many gaping questions that have not been answered, that cannot be answered, that are evidence of fraud, and therefore the downside, the ultimate downside is that the average citizen kind of understands. We all know that now this is fella called the party government we do. And I mean, like, it's not the trust that citizens should have in their government. This judgment has totally eroded it. The trust that citizens should have in the Constitution. You hear Americans talking about their Constitution as if it's second only to the Bible and the Quran, honestly. The trust in the Constitution, Nigerians don't have that kind of trust. You can bend it the way you like, based on who you know, based on how much you have. And that is the impression that this leaves with us. And that is something that we're going to deal with that needs to change on the long term. And yes, Salisu Buhari was removed. Yes, Evans Enweren was removed. A number of people have been removed for offenses that were even way smaller. Do you know Evans Enweren was removed because of the issue of whether it was Evan Enweren on one certificate and Evans on another? Just Evan and Evans. It wasn't difference of dates and times and fake school. And this is a shame. This is a national shame. This is a national shame. There's just no way to say it. And Nigerians need to speak up about it. Nigerians need to react. Like what Rotimi Amechi said, Nigerians need to react. Nigerians need to show their displeasure about this. So that, because once the Supreme Court has failed us, the very next thing, and I agree with the lady, Aisha Yusuf, yes, when she said there's likely going to be some real big revolution coming down the scene that's bigger than NSAS, I would not be shocked. Because once you've, Dele Parotimi said the same thing. He said, this system needs to be stripped naked for people. And I think it has now been stripped naked. People now see that there's really, yes, you can find a great candidate. People said there were no great candidates running. We found a great candidate. Young people don't vote. Youth apathy. Young people voted. Young people campaigned, organized, and did everything they were supposed to do. Okay, then, okay, well, don't scatter everything, go to court. If you have incontrovertible evidence, we have a judiciary that will uphold the law. The evidence in this case, from the Labour Party case to the PDP case, was beyond incontrovertible. Beyond incontrovertible. But see where we still landed. So the ultimate loser is the country, is a nation state, because the citizens are going to grow, are going to become more disenfranchised. I do not see your selling point for the next presidential election. I don't see it. What are you going to tell the young people now? What are you offering them? The only reason they came out in trust, in the large numbers and donations. I know how many groups donated from here and back home as well for this election because of the electronic part of it, the IREV and Beavers and all of those things. And you shut it down on the day of the dance. I'm an IT director, right? I manage an IT budget, and I've worked in the US government agencies for the past 7 or 8 years. You cannot get a budget that big to perform a function on a particular day, and you have 4 years to plan for it. You have 4 years to set up your network to ensure you have redundancy in that network so that if one equipment fails, the other will automatically kick in. You have the time and chance to do testing upon testing, stress testing, all manner of testing that you want to do, including your bandwidth. You have enough time to set up backups. You have enough time to set up your defense in-depth security architecture on your network because you know you're going to be attacked. And you had the resources for it. And on the day off, you dashed the hopes of 200 million people because you said your system went off and you couldn't bring it back up. When has that ever happened to any national enterprise IT system? When has that ever happened? And to date, I do not know that we have any commission, either the National Assembly or the Ministry of Science and Technology, that has actually said, let us see what happened to that election. I understand that Peter Obi brought an expert from AWS who confirmed that the systems were up at the time. So Bob Marley said, you can fool some people sometime, but you can't fool all the people all the time. You are dealing with a generation that grew up on technology, and you are disappointing and disenfranchising them. So I don't know, next election, what are you going to say? Say, come out and vote because your vote will count. How? And when in the democratic system, when general confidence is lost on the voting process, you're not very, very far away from anarchy. And that's just the truth of it.
Well, I was reading somewhere today and I've been able to confirm it that two of the appeal court judges, that's Justice Samani and Justice Ada, have been nominated for the Supreme Court appointment. That looks to me like, yeah, okay, if we all think, for example, and agree that there's some very poor judgment on the part of the appeal court judges, which includes these two that I mentioned, and they are now being elevated to the Supreme Court. Does that not look like they are being promoted or being rewarded, so to say, for if you understand what I mean? Because naturally, I mean, if you're involved with that, this has nothing to do with partisanship. Everybody knows it's clear, it's well written. We've already in 2022 Electoral Act as amended, and clearly they goofed big time, big time. I can say it anytime. But now two of them are being elevated to the Supreme Court. I'm not surprised it's happening, but that's a bad precedent. What do you think?
It's not a
I mean, it
precedent.
happened
It's
in the past. I know most judges now
exactly.
have their kids as judges, so that's a
Eh,
bad precedent. So maybe I should just put it like this: does it not just totally nail it that way, Banana Republic? I mean,
Yes, there's a level of brazenness, impunity, and reckless abandon that has now come along with impropriety in our society. And that's just the truth. Like, you can do something improper and be shy and silent about it. But I think our society has become so reprobate, unrepentant, and so brazen that a person can do wrong and can be awarded for it publicly. And it's not the first time it's happening. It's happened again and again and again and again. You hear in the military, in ambassadorial positions. I think all Nigerians should listen to the speech that Justice Mohammed, Datijo Musa Mohammed, political speech, because he spoke exactly about this. Because he spent 47 years in the judiciary and retired as a justice of the Supreme Court. And he talked exactly about this to say the way justices are appointed in Nigeria today is not the way it used to be. Back in the day, you didn't have to lobby, you didn't have to know anyone. You only had to be competent in your job and had the character to back it up. But now it's mostly a party situation. So he talked about how the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has so much control on about 4 federal institutions of law, such that he has so much power and he has so much control with him. Now, when that kind of person is beholden to a particular candidate or a particular president, so that means that president essentially has the judiciary on lockdown and can do whatever they do. So there's a lot that needs to be unpacked, because what we are dealing with in Nigeria is not just bad character on the parts of individuals. We are dealing with a country whose institutions have been so compromised, whose structures have been so skewed that you can pass illegality through the legal way, through institutions. They are so skewed. The way they are set up is skewed, is rigged. The appointment is rigged. The president should not be appointing the other chairman, for instance. So there's a lot of institutional restructuring and rework that needs to be done in Nigeria. And I hope we'll get to that point in this discussion that needs to be done. So the appointments or the promotion that you just mentioned, Mr. Adiolu, is not new in our history. It's very common when people do improper things and just a brazen act of promotion or reward, and you just go on with it. You see a minister who failed in a certain portfolio, promoted to another portfolio. You see somebody who has been convicted of crime, potentially even serve time, come back and become National Party chairman. It's happened in Nigeria. So it's not new. It's a very, very bad culture that needs to change, unfortunately.
but it does also look like, because a lot of us are saying APC, Tinubu, Buhari, impunity, and all that. Even when PDP was in power, the judiciary and INEC too, I mean, they might not be this bad, but these problems were there. Remember when Ngige was abducted, elections were rigged. I mean, a lot of people said the Southwest, when PDP took over the Southwest, there were a lot of rigging too. In the NPN, the UPN days, these things have always been there. I'm sure if we go back in history, like we always do, because when we talked about certificate forgery, we went to pre and post independence, it's been there. So the issue of poor judgment too, when you say the judiciary was not like this 40 years ago, but we've had cases also in the past, that, I mean, not this brazen. So, I mean, it looks like, yes, maybe the standard keeps dropping, but it's always been there. Now, my question is there a way out of all this? I mean,
There is.
the judiciary now as the focal point. We know the country has a lot of issues. Nothing is more or less working. But the judiciary as a focal point, because De La Faro to me is saying for example, that we cannot vote the problem away. So that means that the voting itself is a waste of time considering what happened in the off-cycle election. But using the judiciary as a focal point, is there a way out of all this? Can the judiciary cleanse itself internally, outside, whatever is happening? Can the NBA, can lawyers of repute? Is there a way around it?
From the judiciary.
Yeah, just the judiciary. Because that's
Personally,
the hope
I
of the
don't.
man.
Personally, I don't see it. I don't see it because I think those of us on the left, we were a little bit not naive, but we were too optimistic, we were too hopeful, in the sense that we trusted the judiciary as though the judiciary is immune from the rot in our society. We put our hope in the judiciary. Yes, it's the last hope of the common man, but as of present day, that is just rhetoric. The Ahmed Lawan case, the Hope Uzodinma case, there are so many cases that befuddle even lawyers, even judges, and the Chief Justice that you talked about it. Like some judgments have been passed in Nigeria that are just so bad. I think some of our judges actually got reprimanded from abroad, from the United States. Now, look at the problem. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, according to Justice Datijo, makes 400,000 naira a month. Other justices of the Supreme Court make 750,000 naira a month in their salary. That's $400 and $750 every month. The highest court of the land. That in itself should tell all of us there's a degree to which these judges and justices can make independent, can be immune to the level of bribery and corruption. And we're talking about a country where there are political office holders in Nigeria who are returning billions of naira. You understand? So you have politicians who have stolen billions of naira, and you have the last hope of the common man making peanuts after 40 years in service. So what do you think is going to happen? Of course, they're going to be bought. They are human beings. So I don't see a way that the Nigerian judiciary, along with other institutions, not just the judiciary, by the way, National Assembly, executive, how they will be able to cleanse themselves from inside without the citizens of Nigeria taking their rightful position and demanding change. I think that is what is next at this point. That is what is next. Nigerian citizens will need to step, and it's also a long discussion, it's a long journey. But I think that a point will come. People are beginning to complain because of the economy, because of just how harsh the economy is. But I think that until there is that citizen refusal, citizen rebellion against the present order, I don't see any one of these institutions saving Nigeria at this point.
Well, that's that's a very tough one, and
I'm an optimist.
compelled to. Yeah, I know. So there's
But
something that went viral today. I don't know if you saw it. You know, the woman, Joyce Hilda Bandwa, ex-Malawian president, you know, she said, "Where I come from, Malawi, in our last presidential election in 2020, a sitting president used TPEX to change the election figures. Our award-winning judiciary nullified the election." She took a picture with the LP presidential candidate, that's Peter Obi, and it went viral in our country. And she made a speech that, you know, that she was in Nigeria during the election as an observer and all that, that she noticed so many irregularities and all that, that she was shocked with that kind of thing. So why am I saying this? Do you think, having said all this, I'm sure the answer is glaring and clear, but do you think Nigeria has lost a lot of mileage internationally, respect and what have you? You know,
absolutely.
do you think we still carry any scintilla of respect as a country?
I feel like as long as President Tinubu is in authority, we are not going to command that respect. We just can't, because just look at the number of heads of states or high caliber individuals from other countries that have made mocking remarks about this situation. I think the head of state of one of the West African countries was the first person who called it out during the standoff about the coup in Niger, where I believe that Mali or Guinea said, "No, we know you didn't win that election. We know you were wrong." A few weeks after that, a commentator in South Africa, the South African television, also made a comment about how the Nigerian president doesn't have the moral justification because of the way he was elected. And then when the candidate then, Jagaban said, "Go to court." One of a Ghanaian actor, I believe it was John Dumelo, said, "In Ghana, politicians are afraid to go to court after elections, but in Nigeria, politicians actually encourage everybody to go to court because they have the court already purchased and bought. So you have John Galloway in the UK, who has been a very loud voice in the West, just talking about this issue, but again and again, and highlighting the antecedents of our president. So I think this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. And shortly after the whole election and the whole certificate issue began, we had nurses in the UK, Nigerians, the certificates being challenged. We had other professionals here in the US, Nigerians, the certificates being challenged. And so this thing grows. A little leavens the whole bread. Like when you don't nip, it's like a cancerous cell. If you don't nip it in the bud on time, it just grows and grows and grows until the entire organ and the body becomes malignant. In terms of respect, I don't think that Nigeria will be able to stand tall where she should, as long as we are under this presidential dispensation because of the known baggage that it carries.
Interesting. We're still on Atlantic Discourse. We all know here we embrace all facets of humanity to disseminate positive news in a world filled with a lot of bad news. We give a voice to the unheard. We balance the information equation all the time. We search and discuss the facts wherever it leads. We combine the best of the human race to get the best out of mankind. We serve as a bridge between the developing and the developed world always. Embrace business, arts, politics, health, history, and faith-based issues. We don't shy away from the fact. Now, today we're taking a post-mortem on the Nigerian Supreme Court judgment about the 2023 presidential election. We're looking at the future of elections in Nigeria. It's clear that it's not bright. Things are not looking good. We're just discussing how Nigeria looks in the international world after this. We have seen the embarrassment from the United Arab Emirates after there was a state visit. The Nigerian government went to town saying that the airlines will start flying both ways. There will be restoration of visa process, and clearly it all became an embarrassment. We've talked about in the past the fiasco in Niger, the huffing and puffing. Today, the military junta is there. I mean, it just looks like the government doesn't know what they're doing. But my question to you right now is that the Nigerian economy itself, it's in a terrible state. It's pathetic. The naira is perennially as So my question is, I mean, even if there's a sincere effort to rejuvenate the economy, you said that under this dispensation it cannot be done. Do you think that moral burden is also weighing down the economy? The moral burden the president carries on forgeries, certificate bad judgment, and all that.
Of course, because that's going to affect foreign investment. GSK just left Nigeria, and they are the ones that make the asthma inhaler, the Ventolin inhaler. And there's a video going viral. Yes, and one of the biggest ones. So there was a video that went around a couple of days ago on Twitter. This asthmatic guy who was begging the government, like the price of the inhaler went from, I think, 1,500 naira to like 8,000 naira, and it's like people are going to die. So foreign direct investment has a lot to do with the trust that the international community can repose in your country's leadership, right? And if your country's leadership is perceived to be wanting in moral rectitude, if the rule of law is perceived to be lacking in your society, of course, a lot of foreign investors are going to think twice before investing in your country. And that is going to have a direct impact on your economy. So yes, it's a burden that the entire country is going to have to carry. And I would also like to mention here that I've been thinking about it a lot. Democracy doesn't really work well in a country as poor as Nigeria, because poor citizens, when you think about the concept of democracy, and that is something that I would like our listeners to think about and give us a comment on YouTube or wherever you're watching. How can people who are hungry, who cannot afford to eat, how can they make a proper electoral choice? They can't. And that is what our leaders have been capitalizing upon. I've been thinking about this, Mr. Diolu, in the light of this election. Democracy is really for an enlightened citizenry that is empowered to a certain degree, not a people who are scraping by, because the people who are scraping by, the only choice they can make is to eliminate hunger from their stomach. And our leaders understand that, and they capitalize on that, and they have weaponized poverty. If you look at the American democracy, for instance, when democracy started in America in 1776, only white male landowners could vote. only white male landowners could vote, and for many years after that. So that meant that only informed elites were making the choice of leadership for the country. So there was a certain degree to which anybody could manipulate it. Everybody had certain independence of thought and choice. It was expanded to include white males without land, and then people began to fight. It included white women, and it continued to expand and expand. But America is a country that has tried as much as possible to battle hunger to a certain degree, even though as it continues to expand. But my point is that if you look at America, America's democracy began to face challenges, serious challenges within, when the umbrella of the voting base began to grow bigger, to include the disenfranchised, the Black people, the Palestinians, the Arabian Americans within. When more people, President Barack Obama gave a speech 2 weeks ago in Chicago where he talked about this issue, that when it was a small group where everybody thought like and looked like it was easy. But when other people got on the table, it got stressful, so you have to work through that. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is, as long as our economy is like this and poverty is this rife in Nigeria, we have a democracy problem. Our people will not be able to make choices that are indeed their heart choices. They'll be making stomach choices. The former government of Ekiti State gave it the name stomach infrastructure because they understand what they are doing. So, honestly speaking, as a country, our government system, we have a multifaceted problems to deal with as a people. And that is a question I would like to leave with our followers, with the people watching, and just Nigerian citizens at large. What are we going to do as a people to combat these multifaceted problems such that we can have actual democracy? Apart from rigging, apart from buying up the institutions, there's also the economic helplessness. 130 million Nigerians are said to be in multi-dimensional poverty right now, which means they can barely eat. In our local language, Mr. Adiodu, they say, that is, a hungry man doesn't think about anything else apart from food. They're not thinking about policy. They're not thinking about anything else apart from food. The person that brings food is the person that controls them. And this also is an issue that we need to deal with.
Okay, so I read today that the Minister for Finance, that's Mr. Ayedun, was saying foreign investment not interested in improving Nigeria's FDI, that's foreign direct investment, that they have been reluctant. So I want us to hit more on the solution, because it's looking like if we had gotten that electoral process right, free and fair and all that, irrespective of who won, you understand, we probably won't be, yes, the economy might still be bad because the last 8 years of Buhari is nothing to write home about. But it looks like people will still have a little bit of hope in Nigeria and all that. So let me put it this way. Do you think, for example, that if we had had a free and fair election and Tinubu had won, the Naira, for example, despite the fact that we're not particularly a very productive nation, manufacturing and all that, do you think that we could have escaped some of the issues we're having now economically? Like the minister said that there's no FDI, no foreign direct investment. Do you think people have shown, you said something a little bit about it, but do you think there'll be more interest in Nigeria economically, foreign direct investment? Because of all these companies are leaving now and all that, it's making our economy worse by the day. But if the election was well organized, do you think it will have helped the trajectory?
You know what they say, Mr. Diolu? They say, don't worry about your reputation, right? Fix your character and your reputation will fix itself. This is exactly what we're talking about. I've not heard this comment, but you can't eat your cake and have it.
I'm just reading it. It's in one of the Nigerian dailies. I think
yes,
it was on Punch, actually.
If you have $5 billion and you're looking for countries to go do business, and you're looking at all the different international metrics that are used, including democratic norms, and including rule of law, and you're reading about what is going on in Nigeria, you cannot be encouraged to invest in Nigeria. You just can't. So, Nigeria, fix your character and your reputation will fix itself. I watched an Obi Ezekwesili interview recently, I think yesterday or so, where she talked about this issue. As a people, we hate to confront the brutal facts about our national weaknesses. And I'm using this opportunity to speak directly to Nigerian people. We do not like to confront the brutal facts about our national weaknesses, including dishonesty, fraud, lawlessness, that our leaders even talk about. I'm not the one saying it. So only us are saying it. Everybody's talking about it. If we don't confront these things in this internet age, where information flies by the second, yes, we will continue to lose opportunities, not just as a nation state, Nigeria, but even as Nigerians as well. I keep saying it, that Nigerians in the diaspora, we are all going to face it. I will not be surprised if a time comes when Nigerians are overlooked for certain positions of trust because of the things happening back home, especially Nigerian citizens who are just residents abroad. I would not be surprised. It's normal, Mr. Diolu, it's normal for a man to be judged against the background of his country. It's just what happens. You see you as a Nigerian, the first thing I want to ask you, okay, this is a Nigerian. I see a Chinese man, yeah, that's a Chinese man. They know technology. I see an Indian, oh, that's an Indian man. Yeah, stereotypical, but that's how the human brain works. You have to call yourself back. So yes, what the minister said is a real issue. The country will need to do a lot of work to go and refurbish and launder Nigeria's image. We've been laundering our image for a long time and it's not working. Because you know what? It doesn't matter. The white-tailed sepulchre is still full of a dead man's rotting bones. You cannot fix and paint a graveyard in brilliant white colors. It doesn't change what is inside it, but fix what is inside and the outside will follow cue. So yes, Mr. Wale Edun and all Nigerians, we need to go back to the drawing board and fix the institutions, the structures, and our national character and our national culture. The world will come to our doors begging, just like the world is going to America and Europe begging to go. It's because of the trust that they have in the institutions of that state, of those countries. If we do the same, we'll have the same result. We cannot eat our cake and have it.
Yeah, I can't agree less. I mean, you just hit it, you hit the jugular, and I like that when you go for the jugular. Now, like, we've said it in past discussion that it does look like we're inherently dishonest because I just don't get it. Now, I'm speaking for myself now. We have, with all that is going on in Nigeria, religious leaders, supposedly reputable religious leaders are tacitly endorsing some of these things. Somebody is actually saying it. The country is not an issue. The drug toga is not an issue. The bad and terrible judgment coming in and out is not an issue. I watched some guy, one pastor actually saw it myself, that said that you always say, touch not my anointed. So I'm not calling it. He said they entered a room in Europe. When they came out, they were in Asia or something like that. And it was saying a large congregation. I'm sure you've seen it too. And, so many, I mean, and like you quoted Aisha Yusufu, she said that, I'm quoting her now, she's saying that, paraphrasing, of course, that it does look like the religious leaders, Islamic, Christian, and all, even the ancestral worship, are in cohorts with the politicians misleading the people, weaponizing poverty and all that. So it does look like we're inherently dishonest because if the moral fabric of the country, which should be the judiciary, the last hope of the common man, has really gone so low, they can't even say the truth any time of the day. You have our religious leader, Islamic, Christian, and all that, benefiting from the filthy lucres, these politicians that are destroying the country. So it doesn't look like the moral fabric of the country is dead. So before I go into solution, is there any way you have said, and we have both quoted the Lefanority who said we cannot vote this out. You have said that the people have to act, and I don't see the people acting because hungry people, like we both agree, are never rational. So can there ever be a way out of this? Because the topic remains postmortem of the Supreme Court election and the future of election in Nigeria, which is where we're really, because I want us to hit that, the future of elections in Nigeria. But before we go there, is there any way? There's really nobody saying the truth. There's really nobody.
This is a very, very important part of our discussion today. Do we have hope? What's the future of elections in Nigeria? What's the future of our country? As dire as things look, as downward as things look, I believe there is hope, and I believe there's a way, there's a path. And I'm going to share my thoughts. Might be idealistic, but I think it's actually doable, it's pragmatic. Everything you have said is true. The moral fabric of our country is degraded, just in sequentially degraded over the years.
It's almost non-existent.
At this point, it's so bad. But you know what? My Pastor Bakari used to say something that, it's not just Pastor Bakari. There's an old Yoruba adage that says, "Inu koko dudu leko funfun ti n jade." And for non-Yoruba speakers, that means from the blackened pot. Back in the day, we used to use very blackened pot because our ancestors used coal fire. So from the blackened pot comes the white pap. Yeah. So I think that there's a new generation of Nigerians who truly have a different spirit. If you look at it, they might be the minority. They don't have the political structures. They don't have the connections, but they are growing up. We're talking about the generation of Nigerians. They didn't know Abacha, they didn't know IBB, they didn't know those guys. They grew up in the internet age. And I'm going to use this opportunity to speak directly to these people because a lot of them are called the obedient. There are people like that who are not obedient, but the vast majority of these guys are in the obedient movement. After the Supreme Court judgment, a lot of young obedient people were totally disappointed. They were very, very angry. And when Peter Obi came out to read his speech and said, Dati and I we have taken this the full length we can under our laws. Now we are going to be opposition. A lot of them were disappointed and angry. And they began to some people are going to drop off. This is not the time to drop off. The future that we're talking about of elections in Nigeria lies in a new generation of Nigerians who carry a different spirit and who will be willing to challenge the status quo. And I believe they are there. Pastor Bakari used to call it the new breed without greed. See, I truly believe in that. The new breed without greed. David Hundeyi is one of them. Aisha Yusufu is one of them. There's a guy called FS Yusufu is one of them. Rinu Odwala is one of them. There's a new breed of emerging leaders in Nigeria who are exposed, who have seen what is going on in the world, and they see the hypocrisy of our society, and they are willing to stand up to it. I think one of the problems is that our parents' generation were not really willing to stand up to it. They kind of acquiesced and just lived their lives. After the Biafran War traumatized a generation of Nigerians, both in Igbo land and in Yoruba land across the nation. And they made a deal and a pact to just leave. No matter the conditions, just leave. And because of that pact, that silent social pact, when things continue to go down, they remembered the Biafran War, how bad it was, and say, you know what, it's not as bad as that, let's just leave. But the new generation of Nigerians that are coming up, who powered Peter Obi's movement to win 12 states, to win 11 states and the FCT, and in actual fact, won more than 11 states, but were rigged out. If you look at the intrinsic power of that movement, you can see that, for me, as a man of faith, that God is at work, that he is able to raise a new nation from the carcass of the dying old nation. So I rest my confidence in that. I rest my faith and hope in that. And I'm going to speak to the obedient movement to please do not give up. Don't be discouraged. The journey of winning Nigeria over from the hand of the old brigade is not a one-election journey. It's a marathon. I'll tell you my own story. I've been on this journey since I became a mature adult. After NYC, the first political party I joined was Fresh Political Party by Pastor Chris Okotie, because at that time, I was looking for an option to PDP and I believe it was AD at the Alliance for Democracy at the time. So I wanted to join Fresh. Of course, that didn't go anywhere. After that, I joined National Transformation Movement, led by a certain man called John Dara, because I thought that was going to fly. That did not fly. Yes, correct. In the mid-2000s, I began to, I joined the movement. I was in Save Nigeria group. That was a pressure group, but I also part of a group that we began to organize events in Lagos. I got to meet with Professor Patrick Tomi. I invited him to make a speech at a youth event. I met with Bashar Ondele Momodu at the time, and I had discussions with him. What I was talking to him about at the time was how all of them that formed the different breed outside of the major political movement should form a new party. And I wrote an article then. I'll send you the article. Hopefully you can share it. I call it 2011, the year for a unified opposition. So the ones I was able to reach, I reached. But of course, I didn't have the clout at the time. I didn't have the connections or whatever it is. That didn't work out. What needs to happen now, along with the obedient movement, we need to find a way to bring together the entire left. Kingsley Bogalu, Dumebi Kachiku, Omoyele Showore, everybody who has on the grounds of morals and conscience and character, rejected the status quo, which essentially APC and PDP represent to a large degree, to form a single front, to form some form of political alliance with NNPP in the north and other interested parties, and come back stronger in 2027. That is the way. That is a political revolution. The revolution that I'm referring to does not necessarily mean we're going to go on the streets and destroy things. What we need to do is to sack the old brigade. You cannot teach their old dog new tricks. All they know to do is to steal, to loot, and to destroy, and to pillage. That is what they know how to do. But we are a new generation, and I believe we have a different spirit, and I believe we want to see our country raise its head high among the Committee of Nations in our time. Stay the course. Do not let go. Don't let this loss discourage you. Change is going to come. Victory is going to come, and we are going to have our chance in the sun one day.
I'll say amen to that. We'll go back to Dele Farutimi. He said, you cannot vote these people away, that there has to be. So based on what you said, 227, you have to, people have to plan, recalibrate the new generation and all that. We have seen that the elections are, before I used to say our elections were free, they are not fair. Right now, they're not even free and fair. So do you think, I'm asking a very honest question now. Do you think with the way things are right now in Nigeria, we can even get to 2027 before the cookie crumbles, directly or indirectly? Because the economy now, I know they're borrowing to pay salaries, nothing is coming in, the country is broke, they're looking for loans left, right, and center, they're ready to sign an agreement with the devil just to get a loan and all that. I think 2027 is fine. When Dele Farutimi has said that voting it out is not the problem because the election clearly is not the solution, So, between now and 2027, even Atiku has asked for an alliance with Labour Party and all the opposition, we'll always talk about that in future, but right now, 2027 is far away. Do you have any other panacea solution to the existing melee?
Well, coming into 2023, there were lots of predictions and prophecies that maybe elections will not hold, even including men of God that I really, really, really revere. Say we don't see an election in 2027 because of how the country was boiling under Buhari. Herdsmen were killing, fighting was going on, the Biafra boys were agitating, and the country was on high entropy. The economy was harsh, not this harsh, I would say, but it was very bad, and a lot of people thought the 2023 elections will not hold, but they held. Nigeria is a strange country. The economic and political conditions that have torn countries apart, Nigeria finds a way to survive them. So I respect Dele Farutimi a lot, but I wouldn't say that Nigeria will not hold. Nigeria, these are the people that did Abacha stove. My parents, we used to cook with sawdust. Don't underestimate the doggedness of the Nigerian people. If everything shuts down, Nigerians will go back into the farm and get wood to cook. They will eat bare corn. I've seen it before, and I cannot trust. Yes, people are going to get more angry, and we need that. People are going to get more agitated, and we need that, because if you're not angry at a situation, you can't change it. Comfort is the enemy of change. Nigerians are not comfortable right now, so that helps. But I'm not going to go as far as saying 2027 may not hold. What I'm going to say is, and I'm not going to disagree with Dele Farutimi either to say we can't vote them away. What I'm going to say is that we can vote them away, but not in the way we have done. It's going to be a different kind of voting that commands more vigilance. What we saw in this election was a new set of people trying to vote and change things. What we're going to get to, and I hope you don't arrest me for saying this, where we're going to get to, we are going to come out to vote, but we are going to be as equipped as their thugs are. We are going to be, Nigerians will get to a place where we'll have to say, you know what, if our vote is our power, we are ready to defend it with our blood. So I think when it gets to that point, and there's a balance of power across both sides, usually there's mutual respect. When there's this what they call mutual assured destruction, then our political elites, they will back off. But it would take a lot of awakening, it would take a lot of work, and of course, a harsh economy to get to that point. But again, I would say to the young people of Nigeria, because between 2023 and 2027, we are going to have a new set of electorate. Anybody who is 14 years old now, who is in GSS 3 or SS1, will be eligible for the vote in 2027. The obedient movement has the opportunity to start some kind of secondary school sensitization through social media, through campus visits, to recruit a vast number of new voters who will be awakened against. That's our best way. The other way is not good. It's a lot of bloodshed. It's not good. Our best way is still to go the electoral way with more determination, with more enlightenment, with more strategy, with more alliances, until we can push out this old brigade. And I believe that will happen in due time if we stay the course.
Fantastic. Adejunwa Jorin, always going for the jugular. We respect you. Yes, thank you for coming today to honor us. We're going to call it a wrap there. You've gone for the jugular. You've said the truth. We all know the Nigerian election was a sham. The recent off-cycle election was a sham. The Nigerian judiciary has been a total disappointment. They've been a disappointment to themselves, to the country. They've been a shock to the system. I can't recall, even if this kind of system exists in some banana republic somewhere, I've not read about it. This is just too low. For the country, Nigeria, the country with the largest concentration of Black people on the planet, it has been very sad. I mean, I thought about it. I just don't know what to say. It's, I mean, I know there's corruption in every country, but this is a low.
I don't think it was this lawless or not the military, honestly. Even
Yes.
the military.
And it's good, you know, that we now know where we're in, you know. So that's why we tend to agree with you. So to our listeners, thank you for your loyalty always. We're going to call it a wrap there. We're going to come back, you know, there's a lot involved in this post-mortem election. So we might think of doing a part 2. You know, there's a lot of areas we could not touch, but we're going to call it a wrap there. Adejuwon, thank you for always honoring our call. I know you run a very tight schedule. You know, you're a true patriot. I'm sure that in future, when the proper Nigeria comes into place, you should be part of that brigade, you know.
Amen.
And I know, I think you should be able to serve in future because you have a lot of credibility. You know, I know you very well, and I say that, and all our listeners can see the vigor, the patriotism in you. You don't miss your word. Thank you for being a true son of Nigeria. Thank you for coming to Atlanta Discuss. So to our viewers, once again, that's a wrap. Thanks for the loyalty. Thank you for joining us. We're always going to come back with something powerful, something strong, something that the people have to talk about, because that's our business. We are the voice of the unheard. Take care. God bless you all. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.